It always starts with mindset, because if you have the wrong mindset, you're not going to last through the learning curve long enough to develop the skill set, becoming the person who is able to do the thing. That's the hardest part. An entrepreneur is one who solves problems for other people for profit. One, you have to be aware of problems. Two, you have to have enough mental acuity to solve them. Three, you have to care enough about the people who have the problem and the problem itself to obsess over solving it long enough to figure out how to solve it. And then you have to be a clear enough communicator to communicate to the people with the problem that you found the best possible solution for that problem. All of those things are necessary. And I think one of the reasons so many entrepreneurs struggle in business is because they may be good at one of those, and they may think that being good at one of those things, that it should be enough. So if I can find a big pool of people with a painful problem and deep enough pockets to pay to solve that problem, and I can find an elegant, efficient, effective solution for that problem, but I have to be able to tell them in a way that causes them to believe it, it would be very, very hard for me not to get rich as an entrepreneur. And income follows assets. If you don't have assets, then your income is limited. You're your only asset. So you go to work for a day, you get a day's pay. But when you begin to acquire and build and accumulate assets, those assets have income following. The hardest part of making millions of dollars and being successful in business, the hardest part is you becoming the person who has enough intestinal fortitude and grit to go down into the cave and obsess over this problem long enough to find an elegant, effortless, effective solution. For anyone that the first time they flip the coin of work that it lands on heads, I would not wish that for anybody.
Interesting.
Because if I don't stay in a place where the work is not working for me, but it's working on me long enough, I might have that success, but it's going to more than likely be a flash in the pan success. Part of the reason I believe that God ordained that we go from just enough to not enough, and then finally to more than enough, is because if we went straight from just enough to more than enough without going through not enough, we wouldn't be strong enough to stay in more than enough when we get there. So we have to be yielded enough to how life works, to the principles of life, to truth, to let the work on us until the work that it's doing on us is complete. So now I'm mature enough. That's why and I'm sure you've probably seen this. You might interview some young millionaires who are in their 20s and they've made millions of dollars, and they're still miserable and frustrated. Why? Because they worked on something that worked for them, but it didn't work on them long enough for them to learn that just making a lot of money by itself does not bring fulfillment. They find a very, very large pool of people with a very, very, very painful problem, deep enough pockets to be able to pay to solve that problem, and then they obsess over solving that problem for those people, and then they obsess over figuring out the best possible way to communicate clearly, I have the best solution for this problem. That's the whole thing. Because if you think about it, if you're a golfer and you're a 15 handicap, and somebody figures out how to go from 15, right, how to go from a 15 handicap down to a 4 handicap, and it's only going to take you 30 days. If you have that solution, because we know golfers have deep pockets, even the broke golfers have deep pockets if they play golf. I mean, a box of Pro V1s costs $60, right? That's for 12 golf balls. So they have deep pockets to some degree. So if you solve that problem, if I'm willing to pay $60 for a box of golf balls that I'm going to hit into the woods, I'd be willing to pay $600 to learn how not to hit the $60 worth of golf balls into the woods. Right? So if I can find a big pool of people with a painful problem and deep enough pockets to pay to solve that problem, and I can find an elegant, efficient, effective solution for that problem, but I have to be able to tell them in a way that causes them to believe it. It would be very, very hard for me not to get rich as an entrepreneur. One of the most amazing success principles I've ever discovered, I found it in Genesis chapter 1, the first book in the Bible, first chapter in the Bible. It has so many success principles. And I did an entire YouTube video for 2 hours just uncovering success principles in Genesis chapter 1. So here's what's really amazing. The first thing that God established was the platform. And the platform was time, space, and matter. Time, space, and matter are the boundaries. They are our constraints as human beings who live on this planet in this time, right? Time, space, and matter. Everything that we do and everything we experience is bound by time, space, and matter, right? So God set up time, space, and matter. When? Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, there's time. Time began right there. God created the heavens, that's space, and the earth, that's matter. So time, space, and matter. That's the platform. The next thing that we see in Genesis chapter 1, God gave the parameters. This is the first thing God ever said to man. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. So he said, be fruitful. And then he said, multiply. Well, multiply is not a be. Now, he didn't state the verb. The verb would be do multiply. Multiply is something you do, right? And then do replenish, and then do subdue. And then the last thing he said was have dominion. So here are the parameters. Be, do, that was actually do, have. Be, do, have. Okay, so it's be, do, have. Those are the parameters. Well, if you look at the platform and you put it right beside the parameters, they match. What does that mean? Well, being is the parameter that can only happen on the platform of time. Anything I'm going to become that I'm not already, it's going to take time. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter. I don't chuck her the keys to my car and say, hey, run over to Publix and get us a loaf of bread and some peanut butter and some jelly so we can eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Not because she's stupid. She's not stupid. Not because she's incapable. She's very capable. But because she's not yet become a person who can drive a car. And if she's going to become a person who can drive a car, regardless of how smart she is, regardless of how astute she is, she could have a 300 IQ at 6 years old. She still can't drive a car. Why? Because if she's sitting on the driver's seat, she can't see over the dashboard. And that's how life works. The purpose of time is to become more than we've been being. And we have to yield to time and let time turn us into what only time can turn us into. That's number one. Okay? Space is the platform for doing. If I'm going to do anything, I need space. If I'm all wrapped up in cellophane and all taped up with duct tape, I can't do anything. Why? I don't have any space around me. So I need some space. And then the last thing is have. So the purpose of time is being, the purpose of space is doing, the purpose of matter is having. The reason matter exists is so we can have it. Why? That's the reward for becoming the person who is willing to do the thing. Now, here's what's fascinating to me, that God, in his infinite wisdom, put in our hearts a desire to have more. We want to have a nicer car. We want to have more money in the bank. We want to have more health in our body. We want to have better relationships. We have an intense, immense desire to have. God said, you can have as much as you'd like, as long as you are willing to do the right thing in order to have it. And so what do? We think that the answer to the havingness that we desire is the doingness of the activity that other people have done that have gotten them the having. And so what happens is we attempt to do what they did. Only problem is our assignment's not their assignment. So when we attempt to do what they did, we can't do it. The hardest part of making millions of dollars and being successful in business is becoming the person who is able to do the thing. That's the hardest part. Hardest part's not doing things that'll make you $1 million. That's not the hardest part. Finding there being a big enough pool of people with a painful enough problem. That's not the hard part. The hardest part is you becoming the person who has enough intestinal fortitude and grit to go down into the laboratory, the cave, right? The drawing board, whatever you want to call it, and obsess over this problem long enough to find an elegant, effortless, effective solution. That's the part. Because most people don't have enough intestinal fortitude. They don't have enough stick-to-itiveness. They don't have enough grit to last through the learning curve, to become the person who can do the thing that makes them deserve to have the stuff. You can have as much as you'd like, as long as you are willing to do the right thing in order to have it. People who attempt to have without doing, you know what we call them? We call them criminals, right? I want to have this thing, but I'm unwilling to do the right thing. I'm unwilling to go do the work to have the money, so I'll rob a bank. We call those people criminals. They want to have, but they're unwilling to do. People who are willing to do and don't have, we call them frustrated. Why? Because they've not become the person. They're frustrated because they're willing to do the work, but the work they're doing isn't producing the outcome they desire. Why? Because they haven't gone down in the dirt and done the dirty work. Be a little, do a little. Do a little, have a little. Be a lot, do a lot. Do a lot, have a lot. It's how everything in life works. Everyone has more bandwidth than they think they have, and they're capable of more than they think they're capable of, right? Your capacity and your ability are never the same. Your capacity is always greater than your ability. The principle is this: disruption always follows intention. That's principle number one. When you decide to do something good, the first thing that shows up is something hard. Okay? But if you keep on going, even when it's hard, eventually that I can't will turn into I can't stop. Repetitive use of a limited ability will always produce an increased capacity. So I keep doing what I can't do until I can't stop doing it. And then I have become a different person.